This is the ultimate tutorial for the DJI Waypoint system for drones such as the DJI Mavic 4 Pro, Mini 4 Pro, Air 3 family, or even the Mavic 3 Pro. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use all the functionality, features, and show you a bunch of hidden tricks on how to use this Waypoint system to repeat video, but also to get into 3D mapping, 3D scanning, and Orthomoasiacs so that you can automate a lot of your large-scale missions. I'm going to show you a bunch of different tools you can use to create your own missions for exactly what you're looking for, and show you how to save a lot of time when using the Waypoints feature on the DJI drones. So start off, let's get familiar with the Waypoint interface. You can access it without connecting to the drone, and by doing so, you have the ability to save some missions as well. Each waypoint that you generate will have a couple settings. You can have a gimbal tilt, hover, manual zoom, the speed, the camera action, and the altitude that will allow you to go through and customize what each waypoint does. So doing this on the RC is pretty time consuming. That's why I'm going to show you a tool called WaypointMap that basically allows you to automate most of this and do this a lot more quicker. You can also go through and have the drone fly in space and then save its position in 3D space along a path. So that way, if you wanted to repeat a certain path throughout the different seasons, you could without losing that path that you followed and being able to repeat it perfectly. While flying the mission, you'll be able to see where your drone is at on the map. You'll be able to see all your obstacle avoidance sensors, and those are always on as well. This is WaypointMap. It's a tool I created that allows you to go through and quickly get the mission that you want created and flying. It's a lot quicker than trying to spend the time individually tapping on the DJI Fly app, and it's a lot simpler to do. So if you're new to this and you've never done this before, I'm going to break it down very simply. By default, when you get on here, you're going to be on the old version or the classic version of WaypointMap. There's a lot of different people that use this, so if you click over here on the advanced version, that's what we're going to be using today. If you don't see the advanced version and you see something with a full screen map, you're on the old version. You can either click on it here or on the map itself, and then that will bring you to something that looks like this, which is not a full screen map. This is what we're going to be using today because it's a lot more efficient and quicker than the old version, but if you're following along, just make sure you're on this version. So starting off, let's go to Thomas Brooks Park in green level. And this is about what I'm looking for. So this is a place I like to fly a lot, and I'm going to go through and fly this spot and create a 3D model and ortho of this throughout this video. I'm going to break this down pretty simply to start off, and then I'm going to tell you, if you're new, to just skip ahead, get your installation set up, and then maybe in the future come back and kind of look at the more complicated or advanced section. So if you've never done this before, you're probably going to want to start off with the POI tool. If you want to make a 3D model, this is really solid. And if you want to create like an ortho or a single large image, the rectangle or polygon tool is probably for you. And if you want to do some type of video pre-planning, maybe you want to pre-plan a waypoint mission of a certain subject beforehand, the Waypoint tool is going to be good for you. So each of these tools are going to allow you to click and drag or create or tap. So I'm just going to click and drag for the circle or the POI tool. And what this is going to do when I click on this, or I can adjust this slider here, is generate this mission specifically with focusing on the center point. So if you click on each of these waypoints, they're each going to have a lot of data about them, and they're going to tell you kind of what they're doing. So as you can see here, this would be kind of an ideal flight path if you wanted to create a 3D model of this subject. Now, services like Aerial Model have a 25 image limit, at least for the free version, so I might drop the quality down a little bit, which, to be fair, this is not going to do much. And now we're under that 25 image limit, and of course the drone will kind of create a pretty solid, decent model of the subject. So this would be, especially if you were doing a single building, a very small subject, maybe not a super complex subject, this would be a really good way to start. This is something that you can then download, figure out if you want it to hover or return to home, and then have it download the KMZ and move on to the next step, which is basically installing it. So that's a very simple start if you've never done this before and you want to create a 3D model. I'd recommend that you start with that, get it working, and make a model before you come back to the more advanced sections. If you want to make an ortho or a single large image, we can basically break that down, and I'm also just doing Control-Z, or you can just do undo, and then you can go through and kind of hover and select the area that you want, and then generate that out. And as you can see, depending on your quality, the drone will fly back and forth, and it will keep these nice pretty patterns, and then it will have the drone create a 3D or a single large image. I would recommend though, if you're doing an ortho, you might want to increase that overlap a little bit, and I'd also recommend that you would set the camera to -90 degrees, which these are all settings that you can search for in the advanced section. And then you can generate, and then the drone will fly back and forth looking down at the ground at 90 degrees. So that's a very simple start. I'd recommend that you at least get this verified, make sure that this is what you want, and then come back to the more advanced sections of this video that are going to explain a lot more of the complicated things you can do with this tool. So with that being said, if you're using the Waypoint tool and you want to make some video, maybe you want to have the drone fly around here, you can have the drone itself fly a circle, and then maybe you want to individually adjust these waypoints so that they're looking somewhere different, maybe a little higher. You can adjust the settings so much depending on what you're looking for, and this allows you to kind of pre-plan that as well. If you're using the video tools though, you might want to stick around for the more complex sections, because you can actually go through and select each of these points and mass edit them. So that will be something, but if you're just using this for video, just start by getting this mission loaded in your controller and then going from there. So at this point, I'm going to move into a lot more complicated things, and I don't want, if you're new to this, to get lost very quickly. It's already going to be a little complicated if you've never done this before to install this, so I'd recommend that you jump ahead to that portion before you come back to this. At least fly a mission before you come back and adjust to use the more complicated settings on WaypointMap. So at this point, I'm going to assume that you have already gotten the mission working, and maybe you've already used WaypointMap before. If you've already used WaypointMap before, I'm going to have another section after this that is going to go through and explain some of the new features and some of the more complex features. As long as you've gotten a flight plan working, we're going to go through each of the advanced settings, and then after that, some of the new features. So starting off, I'm going to create a polygon of this little area down here, and you can of course create whatever you want. I might have it come over to these volleyball courts, come back, and then adjust like that. So I've created this weird polygon, and I'm going to go through each of these settings and what they mean. So the units is pretty obvious. If you're one of those people that likes to use imperial, you can switch between that. You can do metric. It doesn't really matter. It will automatically adjust everything and all your values. Your altitude, of course, is how high off the ground you're going to be. And this is not something that auto adjusts. So if you take off at 60, if you take off at 0 and you go off a cliff, it's still going to, and you don't really go up that much higher, it's still going to register at pretty much 0 feet of altitude or meters of altitude. So the altitude that you're generating here is kind of like a fixed amount. And it's usually based off of wherever you take off. If you want to adjust that and have it automatically adjust, that is a premium feature that is down below that I'll explain later. The speed is how quickly the drone will move. So with this big slider here, you can adjust the speed to quality ratio. So the speed, of course, is going to determine how quickly the drone moves across. Of course, with more speed, you are going to get more motion blur, and the quality of your models, as well as your images and your orthos, will not be ideal, especially the faster you're moving. You'll get motion blur. Maybe it's a sunny day and you can lower the shutter speed down, and that's one of the things you can do to offset this. Coverage, this is the distance between paths. So when I generate this, the distance between each of these paths is determined by that coverage value. So if you want to decrease that down, maybe only have it do 10, that will basically have more lines, but it will also increase the amount of time it takes to fly this mission. The line direction is what determines the direction of the lines. There is a north to south option and east to west, as well as the option to individually select an angle. Auto will basically go through and have the drone fly the most optimized path. So that's that as well. The reverse points order is maybe if you're in Australia, or some people have this issue where they fly their drone and it flies backwards for some reason. The gimbal angle is the angle in which these generated points will have when they are created. So of course -90 degrees is looking straight down, and 0 is at the horizon. And some drones allow you to go 60 degrees upwards. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but it's an option. The action per waypoint is what you want each of these waypoints to do. It does not make sense to have each of these stop and start recording. You might individually create a mission, have it start recording, and then stop recording at the end. That's a lot more practical, but having it, usually you're only going to want to have it take a picture. And if you do have it take a picture, you're probably going to, we'll touch on the picture capture situation in a second actually. And then these are the more advanced sections. So maybe you want to have the drone follow the terrain. So if it goes down the side of a mountain, it kind of maintains the same altitude. So the terrain aware altitude will automatically adjust the altitude of the drone as it flies. The straightened legs, maybe for example, you don't like how the default DJI Waypoint system has these really curved paths and you want them very straight so you keep consistent overlap in your images. That's what the straightened path does. And then generate every point will have each of these waypoints created. Instead of having those long paths, it will generate every single one of the points here, which this might be good if you want to have each of these take pictures. Now, another thing I will tell you too is terrain aware altitude and generate every point go hand in hand, because if you just have it to where the terrain aware altitude is on, it will only update the altitude depending on where there are waypoints, because each of these waypoints are individually adjusted based off their altitude. So some of these, of course, this looks like it's down a hill. So this is at the top of the hill and this is at the bottom of the hill. So for example, if you know there's not a lot of mountains in between here, you're probably fine to fly this mission as it will kind of go down the hill and this will be fine. But say for example, you have a big mountain in the middle of here, you're going to want to make sure that you adjust to have it generate every point, or at least add some points in between there. Otherwise, what's going to happen is it's going to fly, get over this top portion, and it's obviously not going to have any data that it can know that there's a change, and it might, at least it will rapidly decrease the distance between it and the ground in terms of altitude. It might fly over it just fine, but you might want to be keeping a consistent altitude. So just be aware that that is one of the limitations of the terrain aware altitude. The straighten legs is pretty standard, and generate every point is pretty standard. And then if you have a bunch of these settings that you want to save, so for example, if I really like having straighten legs on and terrain aware altitude, and I want to have it, this is a pretty standard setting. Okay, so let's just set this as ortho default. I can save that preset, and then of course we can adjust and have that be our default setting whenever we generate stuff, and that will show up here. And then of course you can even make this your default, so when you load this up, that's the default settings that are shown up. I'm going to delete that, and then we'll go back here. So that covers about everything in terms of the advanced settings. So each of these you can adjust, they are where you expect, and they haven't really changed much. Lastly, you have a new couple options here. You have a split mission, which will allow you to go through, and maybe this is a really long mission, maybe it's going to take more than battery than you actually have. You can go through and split the mission either by your waypoint or your battery time. So that way you can have the drone fly multiple missions. And then there's a KMZ installer, an updated one that will allow you to load these all on the drone. So now we're at the point where if you have gone over all these settings, these are, I want to say, the intermediate settings. These are the settings that are kind of medium complicated. They will allow you to get most of the things done that you're looking for. I would recommend be familiar with these before you move on to this next portion, which is the really advanced settings of WaypointMap. So maybe try these out, mess around with them, and see what you like and what you prefer. I will add as well that you can get pretty much full functionality and get some 3D models without paying a dime. WaypointMap is designed to be free for people that are learning. So that concludes, again, the advanced features. So now we're going to get on to the more power user, more, you want specifically something special, you can do that. So we can remove this and let's talk about generating some weird shapes. So these tools are basically starter tools. They might get you what you're looking for partially, but the goal is to kind of get you now exactly what you want. So when you generate some points, by default, you have the ability to actually select all. So if you hover over your advanced generation settings, or you do Control A, which these keybinds explain, you can go through and Control All. And that will allow you to individually edit each of these waypoints at a mass scale. So maybe I want to have the whole thing rotate around the center, which this isn't a really good shape to show that, but maybe I want to rotate the headings a little bit. Maybe I want to scale this so it's a little larger or smaller. I can do that. Also, you can do Control Z and Control Y to redo and undo everything in this editor. You can go through and basically select certain parts of this. So if you want to have this fly do something weird, so actually, for example, this might be a good thing. You can individually rotate your selection here and have it do that. And so then you have this weird shape here that you normally wouldn't be able to get. And this can be whatever you're looking for. You can individually create this. You can also select, which I'm just doing Control, Shift, and drag, and you can delete the waypoints. So if you want to quickly go through and get exactly what you want, you can do that as well. So here's all the different keybinds. You can redo, undo, drag. You can individually click on these if you want to remove them. I'm just doing Control and click. You can individually click on these and get what you want. And then you can rotate the headings of certain ones explicitly. And at the end, you have a really funky mission. And that's the final result. So then you can kind of create exactly what you're looking for. Maybe you want to even break that up even farther. But this allows you to mass edit. You also have copy and paste. So if you want to copy this and paste this, it will paste this at the end. But yeah, you can do that. You can individually create exactly what you want, adjust each of these settings, scale it up. And at the end, you have a mission that would probably have taken you 30 minutes to do. You can probably do in under a minute. So I don't know why you'd want this flight path, but this is just an example. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to make a mission that I'm going to fly. So at this point, I'm going to show you what I do when I look at a subject, how to make the best quality model. So as I've touched on before, for single subjects, you're going to probably want to use, I'm going to set this to 45, take picture, and I might even use the simple tab. So we're going to generate this. I want that a little bit less. And at this point, that's looking really solid. So this drone is going to go up here, fly this mission, and be ready to go. So this keeps me under that 25 image limit, and this would be a great start. Now I probably will want a couple more. And that looks pretty solid. That will get me 2 passes and keep me well under the image limit. And then I believe I had this set to take pictures. Yes. So I can have each of these take pictures, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. So I'm going to have it not split the mission, and I'm going to have it return to home. And this is only going to take me, in theory, 2 minutes. So let's download the KMZ for that one. And then also, I'm going to have it do an ortho over here. So let's have it do an ortho of this subject, and I'm going to make the quality a little bit higher. I'm going to set the gimbal angle down to 90 degrees. I'm going to have it use the terrain aware altitude, straighten legs, and generate every point. And now each of these points are going to be at negative 90 degrees with a lot of overlap. And as you can see, this one's going to not take too long as well. And this will get me pretty solid overlap in terms of images and a lot of different pictures. This warning is basically some drones, especially if you're in the like 5-second to 10-second range. If you have it at 48 megapixels, it takes too long for the drone to move from one point to another for that period. Like the DJI Mini 4 Pro will only take pictures every 5 seconds. You can't make it go any faster. That's how long it takes to write to the SD card. So if you have it ask it to take pictures too close, it will not. It physically can't. It will try to take them as fast as they can, but it will result in maybe you only get like 1 out of every other point. So there's my 2 missions, and I think we're good to go. Before we get started with transferring things over to different controllers, there's one thing you do need to do first, which is make sure you at least have one waypoint mission already on your controller. If you don't, you're going to need to do that now. You can do that without even loading up the drone and flying it. You click on this connect to aircraft, camera view, and then this little icon over here on the left will allow you to go through and create a waypoint mission. I can go through and start by just tapping on the screen a couple times, and that will create some waypoints. And then we can go through here and we can exit this and make sure we save and exit. And that will make sure that we at least have one mission that we can replace. So now it's time to go through and load our mission onto the drone. If you have, there's a bunch of different devices. I'm going to explain how to do each and every one of them, but I'm going to start with what's easiest. I have created a WaypointMap KMZ installer. It is downloadable right here. If you do not want to go through the complex process This took me a long time to make. It is a paid feature, but I consider, especially since this took so long for me to make, consider supporting. Otherwise, you can do this fully free, and that's very important to me. But this will save you a lot of time and energy, and probably some frustration because some of these other parts are very confusing. So that being said, if you have a DJI RC2, a DJI RC Pro, or the RC Pro 2, for Android devices, the KMZ installer will work as well, but just make sure that you enable file transfer when you plug it in, which might be a swipe down. This will work fine with that if you have a Windows computer, and you can basically just go through, select what you want to install, and you're going to replace one of these missions. So I'm going to replace this one here. I'm going to say this is the Ortho, and this will install it on the RC, and then I'm ready to go, I'm ready to fly, and I don't have to do anything else. Now, if I were to go through and instead have to manually install this, it'd be a little bit more complicated, but I'm going to show you how to do that just next. So consider, if you want an easier life, consider supporting me that way. So I'm just going to save the other mission to as model, make sure I have the right one selected, and install that. And then now I'm good to go, I'm ready to go fly, and that's as long as it took me. Now, if you don't have that, let's jump into what you actually need to do. So starting off, I'll start off with what is easiest as well. If you have an Android device, the DJI RC Pro, RC Pro 2, or RC2, if you have a Mac, you're going to need to install something called OpenMTP, and that is a program that is going to let you access the files on an Android device. If you try to plug it in and you have a Mac and you try to plug in your RC, nothing will show up. So you need to install that program to access these files. Once you install that program, you're going to go through the same process that we are on Windows, which is where you're going to connect to the device. You're going to select it, and you're going to look for this Android data, DJI Go V5, files, and Waypoint folder. And that is the whole path up there. So when you get to your DJI Pro, you're just going to follow that whole path. And again, that is the DJI RC Pro 2, internal shared storage, Android, data, DJI Go V5, files, and Waypoint. Then you can click on one of these missions. So your mission files are going to be these crazy text. This is these random GUIDs or text with random numbers. The capability, the map preview, all that stuff is not something you have to worry about. So each of these are your missions. So I'm going to click on one, and what you are doing is you are replacing this file with your new KMZ. So you've just downloaded something. So I'm going to take that, and I'm going to drag that in there. And then I am going to rename, copy, delete this, and then rename this and paste. So the final result is going to be a KMZ file that you've downloaded from WaypointMap that you have replaced the file on your RC. And that's basically all you need to do, and you're ready to fly that mission. This is one of the easier ones, so that is if you have a DJI RC Pro 2, an Android device, or an RC Pro, or a RC2. Now, if you have a DJI Mavic 3 with the DJI RC, which is the original controller with the screen, at least the consumer version, on the back of your controller it will tell you what type of controller you have. This is the one that does not have antennas on the top. It should only really work with the Mavic 3 family. If you have that one, you're going to need to grab an SD card, and you're going to want to go through and plug that in your computer. This one is the most complicated, so I warn you ahead of time, but it is still doable. So once you've added this SD card into your computer, you're going to want to take your KMZ file and just drop it on the SD card. So after which, you're going to take this SD card, you're going to unplug it and put it in the bottom slot of the controller. So as you can see, I've taken that SD card that I have my KMZ file in, and I have put it on my controller. So now I'm going to boot this up. So now that's booted up, I'm going to swipe down, and as you can see, it has my SD card here. It says Explore and Eject. You're going to want to click on Explore. And this is where it gets kind of complicated, so I'll go slow. you are going to want to find your KMZ file that you have put on the SD card. It should be in the top. You're going to want to hold, and then there's these 3 buttons in the top here. You're going to want to click copy to. And at this point, this is a very crucial step. You currently are on the SD card storage. Over here, on this little slide over here, there is a DJI RC and your SD card. You need to make sure that you click on your device, the actual RC, not the SD card. So whatever you have your named SD card, do not click on that. Make sure you click on the actual RC. Now you're inside the actual device's storage itself, and therefore you go to the same place that you did when we just did the RC2. You click on Android, Data, DJI Go V5, Files, Waypoint, and then you pick one of these random text. Capability and map preview, don't touch those, but you want to click on one of these random text. And as you'll see, inside of here, you'll have a KMZ file. What you want to do is you want to click copy when you see another random text and you have a folder. So if I click on this, that's the order that you should be looking at. Yours will look different here. It will not have the same random text, but it should have everything other up to Waypoint that should be matching. You're going to click copy. Now, you are currently still on your SD card. You need to go back over here, scroll down, and find the RC. As you can see, still on the SD card, you want to be on the RC. And then you want to go back to that back to that same location. So Android, Data, DJI Go V5, Files, Waypoint, and then you want to find whatever one that you just dropped that KMZ file in, which I believe this one is that. It should say WaypointMap. Okay, now what you want to do is you want to hold this old image, because we're going to rename it. We're going to rename it, and what you want to do is this obviously does not let you see a whole lot. So you're looking to get the whole thing and copy the name, and then just rename it old. Obviously it's not going to show you, so don't worry, we'll check that in a second. KMZ old. You then want to take your current WaypointMap file, rename it, and you do that by tapping a couple times. You get to say select all, and you'll paste. So something that can happen is sometimes you do not, and I'm going to click this get info thing so I can verify the name. You want to make sure that your file looks like this. It does not look like this .kmz or this without a .kmz. This is what your file should look like. If you haven't done that, you need to repeat the last steps in order to get the file to match the proper name. It should match the name of your folder, and that's what you're looking at doing. Once you have it matching and it does say .kmz, you are good to go. And you can then move on to the steps about verifying that this is installed properly. If you do not want to go through these steps a whole bunch, consider getting the RC Pro and using the AutoKMZ installer that will do all this for you. So now we want to go through and check to make sure everything's properly loaded on the controller before we go out and fly. In order to do that, we're going to go back to the Waypoint system and we're going to check that the mission that we made. As we can see here, we can go on the map and check out where we went and where we were planning to fly. If everything's working properly, you should see the same number of waypoints and also be able to see and click on each of these points. And we can click and we can see that each of these points look exactly like what we had planned out on WaypointMap, and it looks like we're all good to go and fly. If you do not see the mission that you had planned and loaded, you probably need to repeat the steps. And that also brings me to just a quick couple troubleshooting steps if you are still having issues. One, if you are on a Mavic 3 drone and you have the RC1, you need to make sure that you go through and follow those steps very carefully. That is one of, if not the most difficult drone to get working, sadly, with that configuration. I'd recommend you get a RC Pro or switch to an RC N1 with an external device, because with an Android device, the WaypointMap KMZ installer works, and it's also a lot easier. The RC1, you have to really follow those directions very carefully. If you have anything other than a Mavic 3 with an RC1 and you are using an SD card, you are following the wrong tutorial, and you need to make sure you follow the right one. The RC2 is the one with the antennas on the top, and it does not have any need for an SD card. If you're using an SD card and trying to get that working, you're not on the right tutorial. For the RCN1, the ones without a screen, you are plugging it into the device that you're connecting, that be your phone, iPad, tablet, etc. You are not trying to connect to the physical RC for the ones without a screen. And once you verify that everything works and we're good to go, we are ready to get started. So I'm going to then go head over, we're going to go fly this mission, and we're going to go see what the final result looks like. So now it's time to actually go and fly. So I'm at the park here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to verify that these waypoints look good. They look like what I expect, and I'm going to hit go. And what's going to happen is this drone is going to fly this whole mission without any user input from me. So it's going to go scan this baseball field. I'm not going to touch the sticks at all. It's going to go fly it, and then it's going to return home. And this is all without any user input. Now, at least in the US, the FAA wants you to pay attention, but in theory, you don't have to, as the drone itself will just fly around, take the pictures, and with all the obstacle avoidance sensors on, it's great. As you'll notice, when the drone takes off, it will fly straight up to the altitude that you set. So it will not try to go forward and then kind of meet that. And I'm going to set the resolution on my Mavic 4 Pro to 25 megapixels. So now this drone is just going to fly to that first point. It's going to aim the gimbal down, and then it's going to start taking those pictures of the center building, and it all will pretty much get started pretty quickly. If you are on the free version, you will need to instead, before you get started here, you'll need to enable the time shots feature. So that means that if you did not generate waypoints with action and you're using the free version, which is perfectly okay, just need to make sure that you set your camera mode to the time shots and turn that on. So instead of it taking pictures at each waypoint, you're just taking pictures every X amount of seconds, whether or not that be 1, 2, 5, etc. And that way, as the drone flies around, it will still follow the same path. It will still do exactly the same thing, and you'll get pretty much the exact same result. Another thing to keep in mind too is that if you put these waypoints close enough together, as we talked about, I believe earlier, you will run into an issue where the drone cannot take the pictures fast enough. So as you notice, when we switch back to the camera mode, you'll see that every couple seconds, it takes a while for the camera icon itself to stop spinning before it can take another picture. Some drones, especially if you're on a slow SD card, that's not fast enough, so it's asking it to take pictures before it's not done saving. And therefore, you kind of get a delay, and maybe you're doing an ortho, and that's not perfectly lined up then. So just keep that in mind for yourself as well. So as you'll notice, the drone is just then going to come home all on its own. So it's going to complete the whole mission by taking off and return to home all by itself. I did set this as a setting in WaypointMap. And now we're just going to run through and do an ortho real quick. So as you'll see, the drone's just going to fly through, take its pictures, and we'll be good to go from here. So then we'll have 2 sets of images ready to go in order to process into a model and an ortho. So I'm now just going to copy in all of my files from this mission. So once that's uploaded, I can go through and check to make sure that my overlap looks good. As we can see here, we'll get pretty solid overlap of our center area, which is what we're concerned about. The different colors themselves will help us indicate how many pictures we have covering each area. And as you can see, that looks pretty solid. So let's go ahead and process this out. So here's our final result. It looks pretty solid. It looks like some of the areas where there wasn't a lot of pattern did get kind of cut. But other than that, it looks pretty solid. It looks about what I would expect for this. Usually when you're doing a single point, it's a good idea, especially like a single building, to do a couple concentric circles. And as you can see, this looks like it did pretty good. A lot of these overhangs usually do struggle, but for the most part, it looks pretty solid. So let's jump over to our ortho. And so then here is our final ortho, which actually came out really good. Let's download the TIFF real quick. And then we can download the TIFF here and see that this came out really good. So we can see each of the individual points here. especially the trees. At least towards the edges it will get a little rough, but overall here it looks exceptionally good. It looks exceptionally high quality. Great overlap. Looks really solid. So that's a exceptionally good ortho.